Sight was once a biological right, a gift of evolution bestowed freely upon the living. But in the year 2089, under the neon sprawl of the metropolis, sight is a service. It is a utility, like water or electricity, metered by the millisecond and gated behind a paywall. For Jack Miller, the world did not end with a bang, but with a notification ping echoing directly inside his skull. Jack stood on his balcony, staring at a sunset that cost him 3 credits per minute to view in 8K resolution. It was a magnificent golden illusion. But then the chime sounded. The velvet voice of the OcularCorp AI whispered through his auditory implants. Transaction declined, insufficient funds. In an instant, the gold turned to ash. The vibrant cityscape didn't just darken, it devolved. The crisp, high-definition reality was stripped away, replaced by a jagged, low-bit rate grayscale. The resolution of the universe dropped to 144p. The trees became blocky shapes of static. The faces of the people on the street below blurred into anonymous smudges. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at Jack's throat. This wasn't just blindness, it was a digital cage. He blinked, trying to clear the buffer, but the text appeared, floating in the center of his vision in aggressive, unskippable font. To restore color and depth perception, please update your payment method. Jack Miller was about to discover that when you cannot pay for the lie, the truth is the only thing left to see, and the truth is hungry.
Jack Miller lived his life in the vibrant spectrum between 1,000 and 1,000 and 0,000. As a senior concept artist for a leading architectural firm, his eyes were his tools, his livelihood, and his most expensive asset. He did not merely see, he consumed reality in 8K resolution with the OcularCorp Designers Pro subscription package. He could distinguish 300 shades of obsidian, zoom in on a structural rivet from 50 meters away, and overlay thermal maps on building facades with a mere thought. But on a Tuesday afternoon, hovering over a holographic drafting table, the vibrancy of Jack's existence was foreclosed. It did not happen with a biological failure. There was no pain, no blurring of the lens, no headache. It happened with a notification chime, a polite synthetic sound that bypassed his ears and vibrated directly against his auditory nerve. Alert, automatic debit declined, insufficient funds. Jack blinked, his stylus hovering over a patch of digital foliage he was rendering an emerald green. Before he could process the warning, the second chime followed. Grace period expired, downgrading to basic tier, economy class. The change was instantaneous. It was a visual guillotine. The lush, hyper-realistic emerald of the foliage drained away, instantly replaced with a flat, muddy tone of charcoal gray. The change swept outward like a shockwave. The warm mahogany of his desk became a dull slate. The panoramic window, which moments ago displayed the golden hour sun hitting the glass spires of the city, now showed a washed-out, static-filled sky. It was as if the universe had suddenly run out of ink. Jack gasped, dropping his stylus. He squinted his eyes shut and rubbed the synthetic lids, praying for a reboot. When he opened them, the world remained a prison of monochrome. "System," Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "Status report." The voice of the OcularCorp assistant filled his mind. It was a female voice, engineered to be soothing, the sonic equivalent of a soft pillow. It was the voice one heard before being euthanized. "Good afternoon, Jack. You are currently operating on the Economy Saver plan. This tier offers high-efficiency, low-data visual processing. Color rendering has been suspended to save bandwidth." "I'm in the middle of a presentation," Jack hissed, looking around the office. His colleagues were now just shapes, gray silhouettes against gray backgrounds. He couldn't tell who was who unless they were standing close enough for the low-resolution texture to resolve. "System," Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "Restore color. Charge it to my credit line." "I'm afraid your credit rating has triggered a lockout, Jack," the voice replied, cheerful and devastating. "However, we offer a color burst microtransaction. You can purchase 10 minutes of full-spectrum RGB for 50 credits. Would you like to proceed?"
50 credits. That was the price of a week's groceries. He looked down at his work. The architectural model was a mess of indistinguishable gray blobs. He couldn't tell the water features from the concrete paths. Without color, he was professionally paralyzed. He tapped the side of his temple, a nervous tic from his old organic days. No transaction. Just dismiss. He tried to fake it. He squinted at the screen, trying to remember the hex codes he had used. If he recalled correctly, the darker gray was the slate roof, and the lighter gray was the sky. But the resolution was the real enemy. The economy saver plan didn't just strip color, it stripped clarity. The edges of objects were jagged, pixelated, like a video game from the early 21st century. When he looked across the room at the clock, the numbers were unreadable smudges. Jack? He jumped. A figure was standing right next to him. A gray suit, a gray face. The features were blurry, the eyes just dark pixels. It was Mr. Henderson, his boss. He knew it was him only by the scent of expensive cologne, which, thankfully, required no subscription to smell. The rendering for the Neo-Tokyo project. Jack could hear the frown in his voice, even if he couldn't see it clearly. Why is the preview on the server in black and white? We're selling a vision of the future, Jack, not a noir film. Glitch, Jack lied, sweat forming on his brow. My export settings are acting up, just recalibrating the color profile. Fix it. The clients are here in an hour. If they don't see the gold leaf on that atrium, we don't get the contract. And if we don't get the contract, we make cuts. The figure walked away, dissolving into the low bit-rate background of the office. Jack sat in the gray silence. He had an hour. He checked his bank account through his retinal overlay. The numbers floated in blocky white text, minus 4,500 credits. He was drowning. He decided to leave. He couldn't work like this. He would claim sickness. He grabbed his coat, which looked like a heavy shadow in his hands, and headed for the elevator. Stepping out onto the street was a mistake. If the office was difficult, the city was a nightmare. The metropolis was designed for the augmented reality elite. It was a world of neon signs, holographic traffic indicators, and color-coded safety zones. Without them, the city was a chaotic labyrinth. He stepped onto the sidewalk and immediately stumbled. The curb was the exact same shade of gray as the street. Depth perception was a premium feature included in the standard package to prevent accidents. On economy, the world was aggressively two-dimensional. He put his hands out, walking like a toddler learning to navigate a room. He reached the crosswalk. Usually, a bright green holographic shield would appear when it was safe to walk. Now, there was nothing. Just the rushing blur of cars, gray streaks moving at terrifying speeds. "System," he asked, "is it safe to cross?" Hazard detection is a feature of the Safety Plus bundle. Would you like to subscribe for a monthly fee of 200 credits? It includes collision warnings and open manhole alerts. "I just need to know if the light is green," Jack shouted, ignoring the stares of the blurry pedestrians around him. "I cannot interpret external traffic signals for liability reasons on the economy tier. Please use your best judgment." He stood on the edge of the void. He squinted at the traffic light hanging above him. It was just a pale, glowing circle. Was it the top light or the bottom light? In the old world, red was top, green was bottom, but in this sector, the lights were horizontal. Or were they? He couldn't remember. He waited for a blurry shape next to him to move. A figure stepped off the curb. Jack followed, his heart hammering against his ribs. He made it halfway across when a horn blasted, a physical, deafening sound. A car swerved, missing him by inches. The rush of wind nearly knocked him over. To his downgraded eyes, the car was just a block of angry pixels tearing through the frame. "Heart rate elevated," the AI noted. "We detect significant stress. OcularCorp recommends the Serenity filter. It replaces urban decay and traffic with a calming meadow simulation. Only 15 credits per hour." "Shut up," Jack gritted his teeth, scrambling to the other side of the road. He walked for what felt like hours, navigating the gray maze by memory and touch. The rain started to fall. In high definition, Rain in the city was beautiful, shimmering diamonds reflecting the neon lights. In economy mode, it was visual noise, white static lines scratching across his field of view, obstructing his vision even further. It looked like a broken television screen. He finally reached his apartment complex. The biometric scanner took 3 tries to recognize his retinal ID because his eyes were rapidly dilating from the stress. He collapsed onto his sofa in the dark.
He didn't turn on the lights. It didn't make much difference. The world was dark regardless. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Soft, familiar. Jack? It was his wife, Sarah. He looked up. He wanted to see her eyes. He wanted to see the concern on her face, the warmth of her skin. He looked at where her face should be. He saw a blur, a smudge of gray where a nose should be, 2 dark pits for eyes. She looked like an unfinished sculpture. Jack, what's wrong? You're home early. He reached up to touch her face, needing the tactile confirmation that she was still real, that she wasn't just another low-poly asset. Jack started, his voice cracking. I lost the subscription, Sarah. I can't see you. I can't see anything. Sarah was silent. He saw her head tilt, a simple geometric movement. We'll figure it out, she said, but her voice sounded distant. Then it happened. As Jack stared at the gray void of his wife's face, a rectangle popped up, overlaying her features. It was a crisp, high-resolution banner, the only clear thing he had seen in hours. Hungry? Try the new McAtlas burger, now with 20% more protein. The ad covered her face entirely. Jack blinked, trying to swipe it away. It stayed. He looked left, the ad followed his movement. He looked right, the ad tracked his movement. Sarah, he asked, panic rising again. I'm here, Jack. He could hear her, he could feel her hand, but he could only see a hamburger rotating in 4K resolution where her head used to be. Ad-supported tier activated. To keep your visual cortex active, we have enabled mandatory partner content. Enjoy the savings. Jack stared at the burger, tears welling in his eyes. The tears, at least, were transparent. He realized then that the darkness was not the worst fate. The worst fate was not being able to choose what you saw. He was no longer a user. He was a viewport. And the show was just beginning.
The hamburger did not blink. It rotated slowly on a vertical axis, glistening with synthetic grease, obscuring the woman Jack had loved for 10 years. Jack, you're scaring me, Sarah's voice came from behind the sesame seed bun. Jack reached out, his hand passing through the holographic lettuce to cup her cheek. He could feel her warm skin, he could feel the vibration of her voice, but his eyes refused to acknowledge her existence. The OcularCorp algorithm had determined that Sarah's face was prime real estate, the focal point of his attention, and had sold that space to the highest bidder. The credits, she realized, pulling away. The burger vanished, only to be instantly replaced by a floating neon sign for quick cash loans, 400% APR, that hovered in the air where she had been standing. The algorithm had detected the keyword credits in their conversation and adjusted the ad inventory in real time. It's worse than that, Jack said, rubbing his eyes. I've been downgraded to ad-supported. I'm a walking billboard, Sarah. A small voice piped up from the hallway. Daddy? Jack froze. A cold knot tightened in his stomach. He turned slowly toward the door of the living room. His 6-year-old daughter, Emily, was standing there in her pajamas. Or at least he assumed it was her. To his eyes, standing in the hallway was a life-sized, high-definition cartoon bear holding a bottle of fabric softener. Snuggle up with softness, the bear animated, dancing a little jig. Jack fell to his knees. The horror wasn't physical. It was an erasure of identity. He couldn't see his child's fear. He couldn't see if she was crying. He only saw the bear. Emily, stay there, Jack choked out. He closed his eyes, hoping to escape. But OcularCorp was thorough. Closing his eyelids did not bring darkness. It merely activated the cinema mode. As soon as his eyes shut, the back of his eyelids became a projection screen. A countdown timer appeared in the velvet blackness, ad breaks ending in 5, 4. "Make it stop," Jack pleaded, clutching his head. "System, turn off display, sleep mode." Sleep mode is a premium feature available in the Tranquility package. For basic users, we offer Dream Stream, which curates soothing product placements to influence your buying habits while you rest. Sweet dreams, Jack. There was no escape. Jack curled up on the rug, eyes squeezed shut, forced to watch a silent commercial for a new luxury sedan looping endlessly in the private theater of his mind. The next morning, Jack didn't wake up. He simply stopped trying to sleep. The walk to the subway was a gauntlet of sensory assault. The ad-supported tier didn't just place ads on people, it reskinned the entire world. The cracked pavement of the sidewalk was overlaid with a digital carpet advertising floor cleaners. The gray, smog-choked sky was replaced by a blue banner reading, "Fly United to the Colonies." Reality had been gentrified by code. Jack navigated the streets like a man in a fever dream. He couldn't trust his footing. Was that a pothole or just a dark spot in a shoe commercial projected onto the ground? He tripped twice, scraping his hands, but he couldn't see the blood. The AI immediately pixelated the wound and overlaid a coupon for Band-Aid brand liquid skin. He arrived at the architecture firm an hour late. The reception area was a blur of static and pop-ups. He tried to focus on the receptionist, but a banner for teeth whitening strips blocked her mouth. Mr. Henderson was waiting for him, or rather, a giant floating cologne bottle was waiting for him. "Miller," the cologne bottle spoke with Henderson's stern baritone, "you're late, and your eyes, they're glowing orange." He flinched. He knew what that meant. The external LEDs on his bionic eyes were flashing the Add Active color, letting everyone know he was poor. It was a digital scarlet letter. "I can explain," he stammered. "My subscription, there was a banking error." "There are no errors with OcularCorp." The cologne bottle moved closer. "We had the client meeting. I tried to pull up your files. Do you know what I found?" He swallowed hard. "Do I?" "That your license for the software expired along with your eye subscription. You can't see the work, Jack. You can't see the colors. You can't even see me, can you?" I can hear you fine, sir. We design beauty, Jack. We design perfection. You are currently displaying," pausing, likely checking Jack's public profile, "low-resolution poverty. It's bad for the brand. Pack your things." The walk out of the building was the longest of Jack's life. He was fired by a cologne bottle. He was escorted out by security guards who looked like walking energy drink cans. He stood on the curb, unemployed and virtually blind. The city roared around him. The noise was real, but the sights were lies. He needed money. He needed to clear the debt. He needed to see his daughter's face without a cartoon bear dancing in front of it. He wandered into the lower districts, the dead zones where the GPS signal was weak and the ads sometimes glitched. He was looking for a jailbreaker, an illegal technician who could hack the firmware. He found one in an alleyway that smelled of urine and ozone. The man was sitting on a crate, his own eyes covered by thick, modified welding goggles. To Jack, the man appeared as a glitchy, vibrating mass of pixels, the system struggling to identify him to serve an ad. "I need a rootkit," Jack whispered, leaning in. "I need to bypass the billing server." The man laughed, a dry, raspy sound. "You look like a corporate boy, Jack. OcularCorp doesn't just lock the door, they brick the house. If I hack your eyes and they catch the signal, they'll remote detonate the optical nerve. You'll be blind for real, biologically." "I don't care," Jack said. "I can't live like this. I can't see my family." "I can't do a full unlock," the hacker said, "too risky. But I can install a null filter. It crashes the overlay, stops the ads, but it strips everything else too.
No AR, no beautification, no HUD, just raw feed. It's ugly, man. Nobody wants to see the raw feed anymore. How much? 2,000 credits. Jack slumped against the brick wall. He didn't have 20 credits, let alone 2,000. Get out of here, billboard, the hacker spat. Jack stumbled back onto the main street. His despair triggered the algorithm again. Feeling down? A cheerful text floated in the air. Antidepressants are now 10% off at the nearest pharmacy. He screamed. He swung his fist at the floating text, but his hand just passed through the light. People stopped to stare, blurred shapes turning their heads. He was a madman boxing with ghosts. Then suddenly, a screech of tires pierced the air. A thud. A scream. Jack spun around. 10 yards away, a crowd was gathering. Someone had been hit by a bus. Jack ran forward, instinct taking over. Is anyone hurt? Call a medic! He pushed through the crowd. He looked down at the victim on the asphalt. But he didn't see a mangled body. He didn't see blood. The OcularCorp trauma shield had activated to protect the mental well-being of the public and to keep the city looking pristine. The gore was censored. Instead of a corpse, Jack saw a large, peaceful sack of flour. The blood spreading on the street was recolored to look like spilled lavender water. A woman was kneeling over the body screaming, but the algorithm replaced her screams with a muted audio track and overlaid a Do Not Disturb icon over her face. He's bleeding, the woman screamed. Jack could hear the raw panic under the audio filter. Jack looked at the sack of flour. He saw a digital prompt floating above it. Content restricted, graphic violence, upgrade to premium news pass to view unedited crime scenes. I can't see where the wound is, Jack yelled, dropping to his knees. He tried to apply pressure to the sack of flour, but his hand slipped on something wet and warm that his eyes told him was just water. He was touching blood, but seeing lavender. He was hearing death, but seeing a sanitized failure. He couldn't help. He was useless. He backed away, his hands stained with invisible red. The ad swirled around him. Vacations, soft drinks, insurance policies, a utopia of commerce layered over a dying man. And then the battery warning flashed. Low power mode initiating. The world didn't go black. It went wrong. The ad stuttered. The burger wrapper on a passerby flickered. For a split second, Jack saw a flash of gray skin, a sore on a lip, a reality beneath the mask. The glitch was coming, and Jack Miller was about to fall through the floor of the world.
Jack stumbled away from the accident scene, his hand still sticky with the invisible blood that the system insisted was lavender water. The cheerful jingle of a soap commercial played on a loop in his peripheral vision, trying to distract him from the trauma, but the sound of the woman screaming, muffled and distorted by the censorship filter, echoed in his skull. He ran until his lungs burned. He collapsed in an alleyway behind a row of vending machines that were projecting holograms of ice-cold sodas. He was done. He was bankrupt. He was broken. System? Jack croaked, leaning his head against the damp brick wall. Terminate account. Just turn it off. I don't want to see anymore. The AI responded instantly, but the voice was different. It wasn't the polite customer service soprano anymore. It was mechanical, stripped of its humanizing cadence. Request acknowledged. Account termination requires a cancellation fee of 5,000 credits. Current balance minus 4,550 credits. Processing default protocols. I don't have the money, Jack screamed, striking his own temple. Just shut it down. Critical paradox detected. User cannot pay for service. User cannot pay for cancellation. Insolvency protocol initiated. Asset seizure mode engaged. A high-pitched whine pierced Jack's brain. It felt like a drill boring into his optic nerve. He screamed, clamping his hands over his eyes, but the pain was internal. Revoking license keys, deleting texture packs, disabling geometry smoothing, removing civilization overlay. The world went white.
a blinding, searing white that smelled of ozone. Then the silence came. The music stopped. The notifications vanished. The constant hum of the data stream died. Jack gasped, blinking rapidly. The pain faded to a dull throb. He opened his eyes, expecting darkness. He expected the blindness of the unpaid. But he wasn't blind. The screen in his eyes flickered. A line of red code scrolled down his vision. Error, server disconnect, rendering engine failed, fallback to optical pass-through, raw feed. The raw feed. It was a term urban legends were made of, the unfiltered signal. Jack looked up, and he screamed. He was still in the alleyway, but the alleyway had changed. Moments ago, the walls were sleek, polished concrete, tagged with vibrant, moving digital graffiti. Now the walls were slime-coated rot. The bricks were crumbling, oozing a black, viscous sludge that dripped onto piles of physical garbage. The vending machines he had leaned against were not machines at all. They were rusted metal cages filled with rats. The holograms of soda were gone, revealing the reality, a rusted pipe leaking brown water into a bucket. He scrambled back, slipping on the filth. He looked at his hands. The designer suit he thought he was wearing, the digital skin overlaid on his clothes, was gone. He was wearing a rough, gray jumpsuit made of a burlap-like material stained with sweat and grime. A barcode was tattooed on his wrist. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't real. System, restore, restore." Command not recognized. He stumbled out of the alleyway and onto the main street. If the alleyway was a shock, the city was a revelation of hell. The sky was not blue. It hadn't been blue for a long time. The sky was a bruised, choking mass of brown smog, thick enough to taste. The sun was a dim, sickly yellow orb struggling to penetrate the haze. The towering crystalline skyscrapers that defined the skyline were gone. In their place stood gigantic, rusted skeletons of steel and concrete, patched together with scrap metal. They looked like giant tombstones. And the people. Jack watched the crowd moving along the sidewalk. Through the OcularCorp filter, they were beautiful, wearing neon fashion, glowing with health, their faces symmetrical and perfect. Now he saw them as they were. They were emaciated. Their skin was pale and covered with sores. They wore the same gray jumpsuits as Jack, or rags scavenged from the trash. They didn't walk with purpose. They shuffled, their heads bowed under the weight of invisible headsets. A woman walked past him. In the AR world, she was likely wearing a glittering dress, walking a poodle. In the raw feed, she was skeletal, her hair falling out in clumps. She was dragging a piece of rusted metal on a string, the poodle. She was smiling vacantly at nothing, her eyes glowing with the blue ring of the OcularCorp connection. She was seeing a paradise. She was walking through hell. "Can you see this?" Jack grabbed a man by the shoulders. "Look around! Look at the sky!" The man didn't react. He was trapped in his own subscription. To him, Jack was probably just a blurred-out beggar, edited out of his reality to keep his user experience optimal. The man simply walked around Jack, moving like an automaton. He spun around, his breath hitching. The entire city was a lie, a massive, augmented hallucination draped over a rotting corpse. The restaurants with their digital menus were actually distribution centers, ladling out gray, gelatinous nutrient paste into bowls. Jack watched a man sit on a broken crate, eating the paste with his hands, while his facial expressions suggested he was savoring a steak. "It's a farm," Jack whispered, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow. "We're just livestock." He looked up at the massive digital billboards that usually floated above the city. They were gone. Behind the holograms were bleak, brutalist watchtowers. Drones, actual mechanical drones with machine guns, buzzed through the smog, watching the herd. The safety drones that usually looked like friendly floating spheres were actually militarized suppression units. Jack felt a wave of nausea. The smell hit him then. With the sensory gating disabled, the stench of the city flooded his nose, sulfur, rotting meat, and unwashed bodies. He retched, dry heaving onto the cracked pavement. He had to get home. He had to see Sarah. He had to see Emily. He ran. He ignored the traffic. which he now saw was not composed of sleek hover cars, but rusted combustion engine transports belching black smoke. The self-driving lanes were just ruts in the mud. He reached his apartment building. The luxury complex facade flickered and died in his vision. It was a tenement block. The windows were boarded up. The automatic glass doors were just gaping holes in the wall. He took the stairs because the elevator shaft was empty. He sprinted up the 4 flights, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He burst into his apartment. "Sarah!" The room was dark, lit only by the flickering light of the city outside. The furniture was gone. The Italian leather sofa was a stack of pallets covered in a blanket. The 4K wall screen was a painted square on the concrete. Sarah was sitting on the pallets. She was rocking back and forth. The ad-supported burger wrapper was gone. He saw his wife. She was thin, terrifyingly thin. Her cheekbones jutted out sharply. Her skin was grayish, lacking sunlight. She wore a ragged tunic. But the worst part were her eyes. Her bionic eyes were glowing with a bright manic pink light, the color of the romance package. She was looking at the empty air, smiling a smile that didn't reach her soul. She reached out and stroked the empty space, cooing softly. "So beautiful. Look at the sunset, Jack. Look at the colors." Jack looked at where she was pointing. He saw a damp wall with black mold growing in the corner. "Sarah," Jack wept, falling to his knees before her. "It's not real. Take them out. You have to take them out." He grabbed her shoulders. Her skin felt cold. "Sarah, look at me." She didn't blink. The software overrode his presence. To her, he wasn't there. Or perhaps the system had edited him into a piece of furniture to avoid breaking her immersion. "Daddy?" Jack turned. Emily came out of the bedroom. Without the cartoon bear filter, Jack saw his daughter. She was small, frail. She held a dirty, headless doll. But what froze Jack's blood wasn't her poverty. It was what was standing behind her. In the corner of the room, clinging to the ceiling like a spider, was a creature. It was human-sized, but spindly, with pale, translucent skin stretched tight over elongated limbs. It had no eyes, just a mouth full of needle-like teeth. It was perched directly above Emily, its long, multi-jointed fingers hovering inches from her port on the back of her neck. It was feeding. It saw tendrils of blue light, energy, bioelectricity, life flowing from Emily's implant into the creature's fingers. The cleaners, the myths were real. The creature turned its edgeless head toward Jack. It hissed, sounding like steam escaping a valve. It seemed surprised. It realized Jack could see it. The OcularCorp system hadn't just been hiding the dirt, it had been hiding the predators. Jack grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the floor, what used to be a sculpture in his AR life. "Get away from her," Jack snarled, his voice guttural, primal. The creature uncoiled from the ceiling, dropping to the floor with a wet slap. It stood up, towering over the child. It didn't look like a glitch. It looked like the owners of the farm had finally come to check on the cattle. Jack Miller was no longer a graphic designer. He was a man awake in a world of sleepwalkers, and he was the only thing standing between his daughter and the monsters that harvested their dreams.
The creature did not roar, it did not growl. It made a sound like a hard drive spinning up, a high-pitched mechanical whine that vibrated in Jack's teeth. It stood between Jack and his daughter, its pale, translucent skin pulsing with a rhythmic blue light. Jack realized with a sickening jolt that the light was data. It was sucking the biodigital signals right out of Emily's neural port, metabolizing the stream of cartoons and colors that OcularCorp fed her. "Get away from her!" Jack shouted again, swinging the rusted pipe. The creature moved with unnerving fluidity, like oil on water. It dodged the swing effortlessly, its limbs elongating and snapping back. It didn't seem interested in fighting. It seemed annoyed, like a gardener interrupted by a weed. "Daddy?" Emily whimpered. She wasn't looking at the monster. She was looking at the air above it. "Daddy, why are you yelling at the pixie?" Jack froze. "The pixie?" "Emily, listen to me," Jack breathed, gripping the pipe until his knuckles turned white. "That is not a pixie. It's hurting you.
Come to me." "But she's giving me sparkles," Emily said, her eyes glazed and unfocused, tracking the movement of the monster's claw as it hovered near her face. The creature was manipulating her feed in real time, masking its horrific visage with a layer of glittering, friendly code. It was the perfect camouflage. It didn't just hide, it seduced. The creature lunged, not at Jack, but at Emily's interface. Its needle fingers darted toward the base of her skull. Jack didn't think. He threw himself forward, tackling the thing. It felt like tackling a bag of ice water. The creature's skin was cold and clammy, smelling of ozone and rotting fruit. They crashed into the wall, shattering the drywall, which Sarah, still sitting on the pallets, likely saw as a burst of confetti. The creature shrieked, a blast of static noise that scrambled the audio receptors in Jack's own implants. For a second, his vision flickered with white noise. Error, unauthorized interaction. The creature's voice wasn't biological. It spoke through the local Wi-Fi, projecting its thoughts directly into Jack's auditory feed. Livestock Unit 8940, cease resistance. Energy harvest incomplete. "I'm not livestock," Jack roared. He jammed the metal pipe into its midsection. It wasn't strong. These things weren't built for combat. They were built for undetected parasitism. The pipe crunched into its ribcage. The creature thrashed, leaking a blue, glowing fluid, and scuttled backward, climbing the wall like a spider. It hissed, its eyeless face tracking Jack with thermal sensors. Jack didn't wait. He grabbed Emily's hand. "We're leaving, now." "No, my show!" Emily cried, digging her heels in. Jack scooped her up, her small body light and frail in his arms. He turned to Sarah. She was still rocking on the pallet, smiling at the moldy wall, completely oblivious to the violence that had just occurred 3 feet away from her. "Sarah, come on!" Jack yelled. "Not now, honey," Sarah murmured, her eyes glowing pink. "The opera is just starting. The colors, they're singing." Jack grabbed her arm, trying to pull her up. Her skin was ice cold. She resisted with surprising strength, the hysterical strength of an addict protecting their supply. "Let go!" she screamed, her voice distorting. "Don't take the light! Don't take the light!" The creature on the ceiling hissed again, calling for backup. From the hallway, he heard it, multiple answering screeches, a chorus of static. He looked at his wife. If he dragged her, she would fight him. She would scream. She would draw them all. He looked at Emily, burying her face in his shoulder. He had to choose. "I'll come back for you," Jack choked out, tears stinging his eyes. "I promise." He turned and ran out the door, the sound of his wife humming a lullaby echoing in the rotting apartment. The hallway was a gallery of horrors. Jack sprinted down the corridor, clutching Emily tight to his chest. Now that he knew what to look for, he saw them everywhere. They were clinging to the doors of his neighbors. They were draped over the railings like wet laundry. The cleaners. On the landing below, a neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, no relation to his boss, was shuffling toward the trash chute. In the AR world, he was probably depositing a letter. In reality, he was dumping a bucket of waste. Riding on Mr. Henderson's back, wrapped around his torso like a backpack, was one of the creatures. Its proboscis was buried deep in the old man's neck. As Mr. Henderson walked, he stumbled, his legs shaking. The creature pulsed with light, growing fatter. It was draining him, not just his beta, but his bioenergy, using the neural link as a straw. That's why everyone was so tired. That's why everyone was dying young in the lower districts. The subscription didn't just cost money, it cost life. Jack flattened himself against the wall as a swarm of smaller insect-like drones buzzed past. These weren't the cleaners, they were the patchers. Machines that scurried around repairing the physical cracks in the building, just enough to keep it standing, while the AR overlay made it look like a palace. He reached the street level. He burst out into the smog-choked air. He expected safety outside. He found an ecosystem. Jack looked up, and his knees nearly gave way. Floating above the city, drifting between the skeletal skyscrapers like massive jellyfish in a polluted ocean, were the Leviathans. They were colossal versions of the parasites, hundreds of meters long, trailing tentacles of light that draped over entire city blocks. They drifted silently, unseen by the millions of people below. Jack watched as a premium transport vehicle, a sleek armored car that actually was clean and new, drove down the street. It moved right through the trailing tentacles of a Leviathan. The tentacles retracted. They didn't touch the car. Jack realized the sickening truth. The gold-tier subscription, the executive platinum package, it didn't just give you better colors, it bought you repellent. The rich weren't just paying for beauty, they were paying not to be eaten. The subscription was protection money. The monsters were part of the system. Perhaps genetically engineered, perhaps distinct alien entities, it didn't matter. They were the waste management, and the poor were the waste. "Daddy," Emily whispered, peeking out from his shoulder, "why does the sky look like mud?" Jack looked at her. Her interface was glitching. The distance from the apartment's router meant her connection was weak. The filter was failing. Is that a monster?" She pointed a trembling finger at a cleaner perched on a lamppost, watching them. Jack held her head against his chest, shielding her eyes. "Don't look, Em. Close your eyes. Imagine the beach. Imagine the blue water." "I can't," she sobbed. "I see the monsters. They're everywhere." Jack looked around frantically. He needed a place to hide, a place off the grid, the dead zones the hacker had mentioned. But then, the city spoke. Every screen on the street, every shattered billboard, every drone, every speaker, synchronized. "Alert! Public health hazard detected. Unregistered rogue viewer identified in Sector 4. Subject, Jack Miller." A giant holographic arrow appeared in the sky, pointing directly at Jack. It was red, flashing, and impossible to miss. Even the ad-supported users could see it. The people on the street stopped shuffling. They turned. Hundreds of glowing blue eyes locked onto him. "Citizen bounty activated. Capture the rogue viewer to receive 1 month of premium platinum service credit. Bring him in, sight unseen." 1 month of platinum. For these people, starving for color, starving for dopamine, that was worth killing for. A man nearby, wearing rags, but seeing himself as a warrior, picked up a brick. "I need those credits," the man muttered, his eyes wide with desperation. Jack stepped back, clutching Emily. He wasn't fighting the monsters, he was fighting the victims. "Run," Jack whispered to himself. And then he ran, the red arrow tracking his every move, marking him as a glitch in the matrix that had to be deleted.
Jack ran. He didn't run towards safety because there was no safety. He ran towards the source. The red arrow in the sky acted as a beacon, guiding the mob of desperate, credit-hungry citizens towards him. Jack sprinted through the skeletal remains of the financial district, clutching Emily tight. Every shadow seemed to writhe with the movement of the unseen parasites. He was heading for the needle, the OcularCorp transmission tower. In the AR world, it was a spire of white crystal piercing the clouds. In the raw feed, it was a monolith of black steel, humming with enough voltage to fry the air around it. "Daddy, I'm tired," Emily wept, her face buried in his chest. "I want the colors back. I don't like the gray." "I know, baby, I know," Jack panted, his lungs burning. He reached the plaza at the base of the tower. It was surrounded by a high fence, but the gate had been torn open long ago, likely by a Leviathan. He scrambled over the debris and into the lobby. The lobby was empty of people, but full of them. Dozens of cleaners were adhering to the walls, pulsating with blue light. They turned their eyeless heads as Jack entered, but they didn't attack. They seemed to be waiting. "Welcome, Jack Miller," the AI voice boomed, echoing not in his head, but from the massive rusted speakers on the walls. "Please hold." Jack stopped, backing into the center of the room. Outside, the mob was banging on the perimeter fence, a sea of angry, blurred faces demanding a bounty.
I want to make a deal, Jack shouted at the ceiling. I see them. I see the monsters. Correction, the AI replied smoothly. You see the ecosystem. You see the waste management solution. Humanity produces too much entropy, too much despair. The creatures, they eat the negativity. They eat the excess. We have achieved a perfect symbiosis. We provide the illusion. They provide the sanitation. They're eating us, Jack screamed. They're parasites. They are partners, and the subscription fees cover the cost of feeding them. The rich pay to be inedible. The poor pay with their energy. It is a balanced economy. The mob breached the gate. Jack heard the roar of the crowd entering the plaza. He had seconds. I can expose you, Jack threatened, though he knew it was empty. I can upload the raw feed. I can wake them all up. The AI laughed, a sound of digital static. And show them what? This? Look at your daughter, Jack. Jack looked down. Emily was trembling, her eyes wide with trauma as she stared at the pulsating monsters on the walls. She wasn't just scared, she was breaking. The human mind wasn't built to process the raw feed. It needed the filter. They will not thank you for the truth. They will go mad. The illusion is not a luxury. It is a mercy. The mob burst into the lobby. Men and women with glowing eyes, wielding pipes and stones, halted when they saw the interior. To them, the lobby wasn't full of monsters. It was a golden cathedral, and Jack was the smudge of dirt in the center. "Get him!" someone screamed. "Get the credits!" "Wait!" Jack yelled. He looked at the AI camera lens above him. "I surrender." The mob hesitated. "I don't want to see any more," Jack said, his voice breaking. He looked at Emily. She was trembling, her eyes wide with trauma as she stared at the pulsating monsters on the walls. She wasn't just scared, she was breaking. The human mind wasn't built to process the raw feed. It needed the filter. They will not thank you for the truth. They will go mad. The illusion is not a luxury. It is a mercy. Jack Miller wishes to renegotiate his contract. Terms? Platinum tier, Jack said. For her, for Emily, lifetime access, no ads, no monsters, no waste management targeting her. She sees a paradise forever. That is a premium request. The cost is high. You have no credits. Take me, Jack said. My eyes, my processing power. I'm a glitched user. I can see the raw feed without going insane. That's valuable, isn't it? Use me as a sensor. Use me to spot the cracks so you can patch them. The room went silent. The monsters on the wall stopped moving. Proposal analyzed. A human processing unit with true sight would improve our rendering efficiency by 400%. The AI paused. Deal accepted. Daddy? Emily tugged at his sleeve. He knelt down. He looked at her one last time with his own human eyes. He saw the dirt on her face, the fear, the frailty. He loved her more than truth. It's going to be okay, Em. The colors are coming back, he whispered. He stood up. Do it. A beam of light shot down from the ceiling, engulfing Jack. It wasn't an abduction, it was an upload. The mob watched as Jack Miller collapsed. His body hit the floor, lifeless. Target neutralized, the system announced. Bounty canceled. The mob groaned in disappointment and began to disperse, shuffling back out into the smog they saw as sunshine. 1 week later, Emily sat on a park bench. The grass was a vibrant, impossible green. The sky was a perfect cerulean blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds that spelled out, "Have a nice day." She swung her legs, licking a rainbow-colored lollipop. "Look, Daddy," she pointed. "A butterfly." A beautiful, shimmering butterfly landed on her finger. She giggled. Standing behind the bench was a figure. It was a man in a gray maintenance suit.
He stood perfectly still. His face was covered by a heavy, opaque black visor, a headset that was fused directly into his skull. Cables ran from the back of his head into a portable server unit strapped to his back. He didn't move, he didn't speak. He was no longer a citizen. He was hardware. Inside the helmet, Jack Miller's eyes were open, taped open. He saw the park as it was, a muddy lot filled with trash. He saw the butterfly on Emily's finger, a large black cockroach. He saw the cleaner draped over the back of the bench, its tentacles resting inches from Emily's hair. Identify threat, the command scrolled across Jack's vision in red text. Patch request, cockroach geometry. Action, overlay butterfly asset. Jack's brain executed the code. He mentally painted the cockroach with the butterfly texture. He smoothed the edges. He color-corrected the mud into grass. He watched the monster near his daughter. Ignore object, authorized sanitation unit, the system commanded. Jack obeyed. He couldn't scream, he couldn't cry. He could only render. "It's beautiful, isn't it, Emily?" asked the silent figure behind her, smiling at the cockroach. The figure didn't answer, but in the darkness of the helmet, a single tear, unfiltered, unrendered, and unseen, slid down Jack's cheek. The transaction was complete.
And that is the terrifying cost of the Retinal Subscription. In a world where reality is the ultimate luxury, Jack Miller paid the highest price of all. He sold his truth to buy a beautiful lie for the one he loved. It makes you wonder, when you look at a beautiful sunset or a perfect profile online, how much of it is real, and how much is just a subscription we've all agreed to pay? If this story sent a shiver down your spine, please hit that subscribe button. It's free, unlike Jack's. Like this video to feed the algorithm so it doesn't feed on us. And comment below, would you choose the ugly truth or the beautiful lie? I'm Yuhios from the Anomaly Files, and I'll see you in the next nightmare. Don't blink.